Imagine for a moment that the air around you is not oxygen, but a heavy, suffocating mixture of perfume, roasted meat, and fear. You are standing in a grand hall, the ceiling lost in shadows flickered by 1,000 oil lamps. The marble floor beneath your feet is cold, but the room is sweltering, heated by the press of bodies and the sheer intensity of excess. You are a guest of the Emperor of Rome. This should be the greatest honor of your life. But as you look around at the other guests, senators, generals, the elite of the known world, you do not see joy in their eyes. You see terror masked by frozen smiles. Tonight, you are not here to celebrate. You are here to survive. Welcome to the hidden reality of the Roman Empire. History books will tell you about the legions, the conquests, the laws, and the roads. But the true heart of Rome, its darkest and most revealing pulse, beat within the walls of its dining halls. This is where the fate of the world was decided, not with a sword, but with a goblet of wine. This is where the mask of civilization slipped, revealing the raw, unpolished hunger of absolute power. To understand the scale of this madness, you must first understand that for the Roman elite, dinner was never just a meal. It was a theater of dominance. And no one staged this theater with more terrifying precision than Emperor Domitian. Picture yourself walking into his banquet hall, but something is wrong. The walls are not draped in the usual crimson or gold. They are painted entirely black. The ceiling is black. The floor is black. The only light comes from stark, dying flames that cast long, dancing shadows against the obsidian gloom. You find your seat, and your breath catches in your throat. It is not a chair. It is a tombstone. And etched upon it, in clear, cold letters, is your name. This actually happened. This is not a myth. It was known as the Black Banquet. As you sit on your own grave, silent servants, their bodies painted black to resemble ghosts of the underworld, emerge from the darkness. They do not serve you wine in golden cups. They place before you dishes used for funeral offerings. The silence in the room is heavier than the stone you sit upon. You realize, with a clarity that freezes your blood, that the emperor is watching. He is enjoying this. He wants you to know that your life, your dignity, your very existence, hangs by a thread that he holds between his fingers. He wants you to eat, to drink, and to wonder if this bite is your last. This psychological torture was the appetizer. The main course was the realization that in Rome, luxury was often a weapon. But let us step away from the darkness of Domitian and move into the blinding, grotesque light of sheer gluttony. To understand the shadows of the title, we must look at what happens when human desire is removed from all constraints. Enter Emperor Vitellius, a man whose reign was short, but whose appetite was eternal. You are now at a different feast. The gloom is gone, replaced by a mountain of food so large it defies logic. Vitellius did not eat to live. He lived to consume. Historical records tell us of a specific dish he commissioned, a dish that was an insult to nature itself. Imagine a platter so massive it had to be cast specifically for this meal. Resting upon it is a culinary map of the empire's exploitation. There are livers of pikefish, brains of pheasants and peacocks, lamps of flamingos, and testes of lampreys. Think about the logistics of this single dish. Thousands of animals, hunted across continents, slaughtered not to feed a city, but to create a texture, a fleeting sensation on the tongue of one man. Ships were chartered from the Parthian frontier to the Straits of Gibraltar just to fetch these ingredients. As you watch him eat, you see the grotesque reality of the empire. Rome was stripping the world bare. The flamingos of the Nile, the fish of the Atlantic, the birds of the dense European forests, all dragged here, to this table, to be devoured and then purged. This is the detail that often disgusts the modern mind the most: the purging. While historically, a vomitorium was actually an architectural exit for crowds in a stadium, the myth that Romans vomited during meals to make room for more food is rooted in the very real behaviors of emperors like Vitellius and Claudius. They would eat until their stomachs were distended, painful, and tight. Then, with the help of a feather and a slave, they would empty themselves, only to return to the table with fresh eyes. Why? Why this biological violence against oneself? Because in this world, consumption is the ultimate display of power. To waste food while the common people starved was not an accident. It was a statement. But the shadows of the Roman feast were not always about fear or gluttony. Sometimes, they were about a descent into a reality so warped that it became a nightmare. Travel with me now, away from the noise of the capital. We are leaving the grand palaces of Rome. We are boarding a private galley, sailing south across the dark, glittering waters of the Tyrrhenian Sea. Ahead of us looms the island of Capri. It looks beautiful, a jagged jewel rising from the waves. But for the people of Rome, this island was a whisper, a rumor, a place where the sun shone but the light never truly reached. Here lived Tiberius. Tiberius was a man who had grown tired of politics, tired of the Senate, and tired of pretending to be human. He retreated to Capri, building 12 villas atop its cliffs. What happened here, hidden from the eyes of the world, became the stuff of dark legend. Imagine standing on the edge of a cliff at Villa Jovis. The view is breathtaking, a sheer drop of hundreds of meters down to the turquoise sea. But you are not looking at the view. You are looking at the emperor. He is an old man now, his face scarred by skin disease, his eyes cold and paranoid. He has surrounded himself not with soldiers, but with experts in depravity. Historians like Suetonius and Tacitus describe scenes at Capri that challenge the boundaries of belief. They tell of spintriae, people gathered from all corners of the empire, brought here solely to perform in elaborate living chains of human bodies for the emperor's viewing. But the true horror of Capri was not just the lust, it was the cruelty that accompanied it. The cliff you are standing on has a purpose. It is said that when a guest bored Tiberius, or when a servant made a mistake, or simply when the mood struck him, they were invited to admire the view. A push, a scream, and then silence. Below, sailors were stationed in boats armed with oars and boat hooks to beat the broken bodies that fell into the water, ensuring that no one survived the fall. The feast at Capri was a feast of human lives. Tiberius consumed souls. He dismantled the dignity of anyone who came near him, turning noblemen into servants and children into playthings. This was the dark side of absolute isolation. When an emperor removes himself from the judgment of his people, when he hides in the shadows of an island fortress, his mind begins to rot. And yet, as terrifying as Tiberius was, he was merely a recluse. He wanted to hide his shadows. The generation that followed him decided to bring the shadows out into the light, to make the nightmare a public spectacle. We are moving forward in time now. The restraint of the early empire is gone. We are entering the era of the Golden House. We are entering the world of Nero. If Tiberius was the monster in the cave, Nero was the monster on the stage. Imagine walking into the Domus Aurea, Nero's golden house. It is not just a palace. It is a city within a city. You enter the main dining rotunda. The engineering is impossible. The ceiling is not solid. It is a mechanical wonder representing the heavens, moving slowly, revolving day and night in time with the sky outside. Perfume sprays from hidden pipes, misting the air with the scent of saffron and roses. It feels like paradise, but look closer at the guests. There is a tension here that is different from Domitian's black room. This is a manic, frantic energy. Nero demands not just submission, but love. He demands applause. As you eat dishes that cost more than a legion's annual salary, you are forced to listen. You must listen to the emperor sing. You must watch him perform. And you must not leave. There are stories of women giving birth at Nero's banquets because they were forbidden to exit the room. There are stories of men feigning death, hoping to be carried out on stretchers just to escape the endless, suffocating performance of the emperor's ego. But the excess of Nero wasn't just about his vanity. It was about bending reality to his will. In his world, night became day, winter became summer, and the moral laws of Rome were rewritten to suit his whims. He married men, he married women, he married freedmen. He blurred every line that held Roman society together. And in the shadows of these revolving ceilings and perfumed mists, a new kind of corruption was growing. It wasn't just the emperor who was rotting, it was the entire system. The Senate, once the proudest assembly in history, had been reduced to a group of frightened sycophants, clapping until their hands bled, eating until they choked, all to survive the whims of a man who believed he was a god. However, even Nero's golden excess pales in comparison to the figure we must meet next. A figure who turned the Roman banquet into a surrealist nightmare of gender, religion, and lethal beauty. You are now in the presence of Elagabalus. If Nero was a performer, Elagabalus is a hallucination brought to life. He is barely a man, just a teenager of 14 when he ascends to the throne. He does not wear the heavy wool togas of Rome. He is draped in the shimmering, translucent silks of the East, covered in jewels, his eyes painted with kohl. He calls himself the high priest of the sun god, and he has turned the imperial palace into a temple of bizarre worship. The banquet begins. But unlike the tension of Domitian's black room, this room is filled with laughter. There is music, exotic and hypnotic. The wine flows freely, mixed with expensive spices. You relax. You think, perhaps, this boy emperor is merely eccentric. You look up at the ceiling. Like Nero's palace, it has reversible panels. Suddenly, a signal is given. The panels flip, but it is not water or perfume that falls. It is flowers. Tons of them. Violets, roses, lilies, a cascading waterfall of vibrant petals raining down from the ceiling. At first, it is enchanting. The guests laugh, raising their hands to catch the fragrant rain. It is a scene of pure, unadulterated beauty, a poetic gesture from a young king. But the flowers do not stop falling. The laughter turns to coughing. The pile of petals rises to your ankles, then your knees, then your waist. You try to stand, but the sheer weight of thousands of pounds of organic matter presses you down. You see a fellow guest lose their footing, slipping under the fragrant tide. They do not resurface. Panic sets in. You realize that you are not drowning in water, but in beauty. The scent becomes overpowering, a thick, cloying perfume that fills your lungs, choking the air out of the room. From his high couch, safe above the deluge, Elagabalus watches. He is smiling. To him, this is art. Historical accounts from the Historia Augusta claim that several guests actually suffocated to death under that floral avalanche. It is the perfect metaphor for his reign. A suffocating excess that looked beautiful from a distance but was deadly to anyone trapped inside. Elagabalus did not just break the rules of dining, he broke the rules of reality. He would serve his guests food made of wax, stone, or pottery, indistinguishable from the real thing, and watch them break their teeth trying to eat, while he dined on the finest meats in front of them. He unleashed tame lions and leopards into the dining hall after the guests had passed out drunk, waking them into a living nightmare of claws and fur, just to laugh at their terror. But the madness of the Roman banquet was not limited to the whims of emperors. Sometimes, the rot went deeper. Sometimes, the entire empire itself was the main course, carved up and sold to the highest bidder. Let us leave the palaces for a moment. Let us step out into the confusion of the year 193 AD. The Emperor Pertinax has just been murdered. The Praetorian Guard, the elite soldiers sworn to protect the emperor, stand over his warm body. They look at the empty throne, and they do not see a duty to the state. They see an opportunity. They walk to the ramparts of their camp and make an announcement that chills the blood of every true Roman. They announce that the Roman Empire is for sale. Imagine the scene. It is an auction, but they are not selling cattle, or slaves, or land. They are selling the world. Two wealthy senators, Sulpicianus and Didius Julianus, rush to the camp. They stand at the foot of the walls, shouting out numbers, bidding for the right to rule millions of people. Shouts one, screams Julianus. The soldiers look down, calculating their greed. Julianus wins. He climbs the ladder, pays the bribe, and is declared emperor. That night, Didius Julianus holds his inaugural banquet. Picture him sitting there. The food is exquisite, the wine is vintage. But look at his face. There is no joy. He is eating a meal bought with the dignity of Rome. The servants look at him with contempt. Outside the palace walls, the people are silent, sullen. He is the most powerful man in the world, yet he cannot swallow his food without fear. He knows that loyalty bought with gold lasts only until the gold runs out. And indeed, his feast lasted only 66 days before his head was severed from his body. This transactional nature of power infected everything. It turned the banquet table into a place of betrayal. And no one understood the theater of violence better than the man who thought he was Hercules reborn, Emperor Commodus. You might know him from the movies, but the real Commodus was far more disturbing. He did not just enjoy violence, he consumed it. His banquets were often held not in the palace, but in the shadow of the arena. Commodus blurred the line between the dining hall and the slaughterhouse. He would fight as a gladiator, killing animals and men for sport, and then covered in the sweat and grime of the kill, he would recline to eat. He forced the Senate to watch him. Imagine being a senator, a man of education and philosophy, forced to sit in the Colosseum, dressed in your finest toga. You watch the Emperor of Rome club a cripple to death, or decapitate an ostrich and brandish its bloody head at you, gesturing that you could be next. Then you are invited to dine with him. You must smile. You must compliment his form. You must eat the meat he offers, knowing his hands are stained with the blood of the arena. Commodus introduced a new kind of terror to the table, the terror of unpredictability. With Domitian, you knew he hated you. With Nero, you knew he wanted applause. But with Commodus, you were dealing with a brute, a man whose mind had been eroded by the roar of the crowd. Yet as we move through these stories of excess, from the black feasts to the floral suffocations, we must ask ourselves, who paid for this? While Vitellius ate millions of sestertii worth of bird brains, what was happening in the provinces? While Elagabalus showered in gold dust, what was happening on the frontiers? The tragedy of these banquets is not just in what happened inside the room, but in what was happening outside of it. The shadows in our title refer to the long, dark shadow cast by the palace over the rest of the world. Every grape peeled, every drop of wine spilled, was paid for by the sweat of a farmer in Gaul, the blood of a soldier in Dacia, the labor of a slave in Egypt. The Roman Empire was a vampire. The head was gorging itself while the body withered, and soon the body would fight back. The greatest banquet of all, the feast of Rome itself, was about to run out of food. The barbarians were at the gates, and they were hungry too. But before the fall, there was one final act. A moment where the mask didn't just slip, it shattered. We must speak of the moment when Rome turned against itself in the most intimate way possible. We must speak of the betrayal of the family. We return to the dining table one last time, but the danger now is not a falling ceiling or a hidden trapdoor. The danger sits right next to you. We are in the year 4 AD. The emperor is Claudius. He is an old man, often mocked for his stutter and his limp, but he is intelligent. He sits at his banquet, surrounded by the Praetorian Guard. Next to him sits his wife, Agrippina. She is beautiful, ambitious, and terrifying. She has a son from a previous marriage, a boy named Nero, and she needs that boy to be emperor. But Claudius stands in the way. The weapon of choice is not a dagger. It is a delicacy, a plate of mushrooms. Imagine the intimacy of this betrayal. Eating is a primal act of trust. Claudius trusted his wife. He took the mushroom, dipped in a succulent sauce. It tasted of earth and richness, but hidden within the flavor was poison. As the emperor gasped for air, clutching his throat, the banquet did not stop. The musicians played louder. The servants looked away. The physicians, who were likely bribed, did not save him. They hastened his death. Claudius died amidst the remnants of his dinner, and with his last breath, the restraint of the old world died too. Agrippina had cleared the table for her son Nero, unleashing the chaos we witnessed earlier. This moment teaches us the ultimate lesson of the Roman feast. The rot always starts from the inside. For centuries, Rome feasted. They ate the grain of Egypt, drank the wine of Gaul, and consumed the wealth of the East. But gluttony is unsustainable. You can only eat more than you need for so long before the body begins to fail. Fast forward to the year 410 AD. The music has stopped. The lights in the Golden House have gone out. The black walls of Domitian are crumbling. We are now in a city that is starving. The Visigoths, led by King Alaric, are outside the walls. They have besieged Rome not by attacking it, but by cutting off its food supply. The irony is cruel. The city that spent 1,000 years gorging itself on the world's resources is now reduced to eating rats, leather, and, according to some horrific accounts, the flesh of the dead. The banquet hall is now a tomb. The senators who once debated the flavor of flamingo tongues are now begging for bread. On August 24, 410 AD, the Salarian Gate was opened. The barbarians poured in. The Visigoths did not bring food, they brought fire. They sacked the city for 3 days. The grand dining tables inlaid with ivory and silver were smashed. The golden goblets used by Tiberius and Caligula were melted down. The velvet couches were stripped. As the smoke rose over the 7 hills, it signaled the end of an era. The party was over. Looking back at these stories, the cruelty of Domitian, the gluttony of Vitellius, the madness of Elagabalus, it is easy to judge them as monsters. It is easy to look at the Roman Empire and see only the decadence. But pause for a moment. Look closer at the shadows. Do you see a reflection? Rome fell because it forgot the connection between the feast and the famine. It believed that its abundance was eternal, that it could consume without consequence. The emperors thought that power meant the ability to satisfy every impulse, no matter how dark or destructive. They were wrong. History is a table. Empires, nations, and civilizations take their seats. We feast on technology, on resources, on the comfort of our modern lives. But the laws of nature and history remain unchanged. If we consume more than we create, if we let our desires outrun our morality, if we ignore the shadows growing in the corners of the room, eventually the bill comes due. The wine runs dry, the music fades, and we are left alone in the dark, wondering where the time went. The Roman Empire didn't just die, it ate itself to death. And as you leave this story, ask yourself, in our own world of endless consumption, who is sitting at the head of the table today? And what are we serving for dinner?